You don't need another blueprint. You don't need another checklist or 5-step plan. What you need is something no one can hand you, because when the path disappears, when every plan fails, and the voices that once gave you direction go quiet, you're left with one question: will I still move when I can't see where it's leading? This isn't about motivation. It's not about hype or hustle. This is about walking through silence with a kind of knowing that doesn't need to be loud. It's about obeying a pull that makes no sense to anyone else, and sometimes not even to you. You've been waiting for clarity, but maybe clarity isn't something you're given. Maybe it's something you earn, step by step, in the dark. So if something in you is whispering, keep going, even now, you're not lost, you're being led. And this is where you learn how. There will come a moment, not once but many times, when your path will vanish beneath your feet, when the map you were following dissolves, when logic offers no solution, and the world says, turn back. And in that moment, you'll feel it, that cold, quiet silence, the absence of direction, the ache of uncertainty. This is where most people stop. They sit down, they shrink, they scroll, they wait. But the few who rise, who shift history, who reshape their destiny, they do something different. They walk anyway. They move forward not with certainty, but with faith. Faith is not a feeling. It's not a mood. It's not the goosebumps you get when a quote hits just right. Faith is a discipline. It is an act of defiance against doubt, a quiet rebellion against what can't be seen. Faith is motion in the dark. Every Titan you admire, every Edison, every Ford, every Lincoln, they all stood on that same edge, faced with impossibility, surrounded by critics, abandoned by logic, and they took the step anyway. Why? Because faith doesn't need all the answers. It only needs one thing: a decision. You think you need clarity? You don't. You think you need a sign? You don't. What you need is the courage to move while it's unclear. That's what builds you. You don't get faith by waiting for light. You get faith by walking into the dark. And when you do, something shifts. You find strength where there was none. You hear inner wisdom you forgot you had. You feel something bigger than you, walking with you. Faith is not passive. Faith is not wishful thinking. It is movement with conviction. It is choosing belief when everything external tells you to fold. Look around. The world is full of people who say, I'll act when I see the way. I'll move when I'm certain. But you must become someone different. Someone who says, I'll move and the way will appear. That's what faith is. It's planting the seed before you see the harvest. It's making the call before the door is open. It's showing up with excellence when no one is watching. It's building the ark, even when there's not a cloud in the sky. Because what you build in faith becomes unshakable. What you build in fear will always need outside approval. You don't need external proof to validate an internal conviction. You need repetition. You need to walk even when your knees shake. You need to speak vision into the silence. The most powerful moments of your life will come when no one claps, no one sees, no one understands. But you keep building. That's faith. And you don't wait for it to show up. You become it. Every day you rise and act, even when it's hard. You are strengthening your spirit. You are rewiring your brain. You are turning belief into behavior. And behavior creates identity. Do you want to be a person of faith? Then do what faithful people do. Act, move, build. Not just when you're inspired, especially when you're not. Especially when it looks like it's not working. Especially when you feel alone. That's where real transformation happens. You think you're waiting on life, but life is waiting on you. Waiting to see if you're serious. Waiting to see if you'll take the next step with no guarantee. Waiting to see if your commitment is stronger than your comfort. Every great breakthrough, every empire, every invention, Every revolution was once invisible. It lived only in someone's imagination until they dared to act on it. That's faith. You can't hold it. You can't measure it. But when it lives in you, truly lives in you, it makes the impossible inevitable. But here's what they don't tell you. Faith is lonely. Faith is quiet. Faith will make you look crazy before it makes you look brilliant. It will test you, stretch you, strip you of everything weak, performative, and shallow. And if you pass that test, you emerge someone new, not someone who hopes, someone who knows. Because once you've walked through fire with no visible escape and still made it through, no fear can control you again. This isn't just about faith in something spiritual, it's about faith in yourself, in your mission, in your calling, in the version of you that no one's seen yet, but you know is waiting. If you can feel that even faintly, it means it's real, it means it's possible, but it won't manifest just because you believe in it. It will only show up when you back your belief with work. Faith without action is fantasy, but faith with discipline, that's power. You say you trust, then show up. You say you believe, then do the work. You say you're ready to change your life, then take the step. You've been avoiding the one that scares you, not because it's dangerous, but because it's real. That's your path. Faith is not some mountaintop feeling. It's what you do when you're exhausted. It's how you show up when it feels pointless. It's the standard you hold when no one's checking. That's what makes you dangerous. Because when you no longer require certainty to act, you become unstoppable. They can doubt you. They can count you out. They can call you crazy. But they can't stop you. Because faith doesn't negotiate. It doesn't check for applause. It doesn't need evidence. It just moves. And that motion, that's what cracks the wall. That's what opens the way. You're not stuck. You're just paused waiting for a path you haven't walked yet. Walk. That's the message. Walk first. Trust the ground will meet you. There is no straight path to transformation. No glowing arrow. No perfect set of steps. There is only the decision to move. To take the next step, even when it's the smallest one imaginable. Even when your hands are trembling and your voice is shaking. Even when everything inside you says, "What if I fall?" You respond with something deeper. "What if I fly?" That's not cliché. That's faith. Because you've fallen before and you're still here. You've been knocked down and you got back up. You've survived things that were meant to break you. So this next step, it's not your enemy. It's your invitation. The world teaches you to seek certainty, to calculate every outcome, to wait until it's safe. But faith teaches you something else entirely. It says, build before there's proof, move before there's permission, trust before there's validation. When David stood before Goliath, he didn't wait for a sign. He didn't ask for strategy. He picked up 5 stones and walked forward. Because faith doesn't require the odds to be in your favor. It only requires your decision to stand anyway. And maybe your giant isn't 9 feet tall. Maybe it's a pile of bills, a diagnosis, a dream you buried because they said it was too late. Or maybe it's that inner critic, the one that whispers, "You're not good enough. You're not ready. Who do you think you are?" Let me tell you who you are. You are the storm no one saw coming. You are the quiet fire that kept burning when everything around you turned cold. You are a force, not because it's easy, but because you kept going when it wasn't. They don't write history about those who waited. They write it about those who walked, who dared to believe when nothing was visible, who planted seeds they might never see bloom, who built foundations in the dark, not for applause, but because their future deserved it. You think you're behind, you're not. You're being prepared. Prepared to walk in a way most people never will. Because when you stop waiting for the light, you learn to be the light. Do you know how Edison kept going through 10,000 failed attempts at the light bulb? He didn't see failure. He saw feedback. He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's what walking by faith sounds like. It says, if the path isn't here, I'll build one. If the answer hasn't come, I'll keep asking. If the results aren't showing, I'll keep sowing. Because faith doesn't break at resistance. It breaks through it. And you're not too late. You're not too old. You're not too broken. You're not too far gone. You're just at the point where most people quit. And the very few, step into greatness. This is that threshold. This is where faith asks you a question. Do you trust me enough to keep going without evidence? Because faith doesn't show up when everything's working. Faith shows up when nothing is. And you go anyway. You walk not because it's easy, but because standing still hurts more. You keep moving not because you're certain, but because certainty was never the promise. Peace was. Peace that surpasses understanding. Peace that comes not from what you see, but who you've become. Faith is a muscle. It only grows when it's challenged. And right now, you're not being punished. You're being trained. You're being stretched into the version of you who no longer folds under pressure, but rises with it. You're building trust in yourself. Trust that you will not abandon your vision. Trust that your commitment doesn't expire when it gets uncomfortable. Trust that even when the world goes quiet, your fire will not. That's what this season is for. Not for comfort, not for applause, but for becoming. Becoming someone who doesn't need the perfect conditions to build. Becoming someone who doesn't require the crowd to move. Becoming someone who walks, even when there's no sign of progress, because progress lives inside the person, not the path. You keep saying, I just want clarity. But maybe clarity isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you earn one step at a time. Clarity is the reward of motion. It meets you after you've proven you're serious. You're not waiting on clarity. Clarity is waiting on you. So show up again and again and again. Until your faith becomes so consistent, so visible, so loud, that even doubt has to sit down and shut up. You are not fragile. You are not lost. You are not hopeless. You are in the fire. And fire doesn't destroy the worthy. It refines them. It burns away the excuses. It exposes what's real. It forges what's unbreakable. So don't curse the darkness. Don't fear the silence. They are simply making you ready. Ready to walk with power. Ready to move with peace. Ready to step into a life that doesn't just look successful, but feels aligned. And the path to that life, it begins the moment you stop needing to see everything and just take the next step. The step you refuse to take is the wall you keep running into. You think you're stuck, but you're not. You're just undecided. You're holding on to the illusion that you can keep one foot in comfort while the other steps into calling. But faith doesn't straddle. Faith requires both feet, all in. No backup plan, no safety net. You want a breakthrough? Then stop praying for a map and start trusting the mission. Because the map doesn't come first. Movement does. Ask anyone who's ever built anything worth remembering, they'll tell you. There were nights they cried in silence. Mornings they woke up with no idea how they'd make it work. Seasons where their bank account, their relationships, their health, their self-belief all were at zero. But they moved anyway. They didn't wait until they felt strong. They built strength in the walking. They didn't wait until they saw the result. They became the result by refusing to stop. And that's the truth nobody claps for. Faith is never loud at first. It's quiet. It's internal. It's the whisper that says go again, build again, trust again. And when the world says you're crazy for believing good, that means you're close. Because every revolutionary was ridiculed before they were respected. Every visionary was doubted before they were followed. That's the cost of being ahead of your time. You must be willing to look foolish for a season. in order to become undeniable for a lifetime. Don't run from that. Stand in it. Let the doubt of others sharpen your resolve. Let the silence fortify your focus. Let the lack of support become the weight that makes your faith stronger. And if you ever feel like giving up, good. That means you're stretching. That means you're doing something real. That means you've left the shallow waters of certainty and are now swimming in the deep, where legends are born. There is no breakthrough without burden, no calling without resistance, no elevation without endurance, and no faith without friction. You keep waiting for it to get easier, but faith doesn't make things easy. It makes you unshakable. You are not the same person you were when you started. You've taken too many steps in the dark. You've kept moving when it made no sense. You've trusted when it felt like madness. And now, even if you can't see it yet, you're not walking toward the breakthrough, you're walking as it. Because faith transforms you from the inside out. You don't get what you want by wishing. You become what you believe by walking in it, by acting like it's already true before the evidence shows up. That's not delusion. That's what every champion, every visionary, every pioneer has done since the beginning of time. They walked like the door would open, and because they did, it did. So if it feels like nothing is moving, look again. Your external world is catching up to your internal decision. Your circumstances are shifting not because you pushed harder, but because you trusted deeper. When you choose faith, you're not waiting for the path to appear. You're building the path with your steps. And yes, you will feel alone. Yes, you will be misunderstood. Yes, people will question your sanity. Let them. Your peace is not up for discussion. Your mission is not a group project. Your future is not waiting for permission. It's waiting for your feet to hit the ground. So what if the money isn't there yet? So what if they don't believe in you yet? So what if the results are still invisible? You walk anyway. You speak the vision anyway. You hold the standard anyway. You wake up and do the work anyway. That's what builds faith that moves mountains. Faith isn't just the hope that things will work out. It's the refusal to break character, even when the scene looks nothing like the dream. You're not just trying to reach a goal. You're becoming someone who can't be moved. And that's the real prize. Because once you build that inner certainty, the external will follow. You won't chase it anymore. You'll attract it because you've become aligned. You'll walk into rooms and not need to speak because your presence will do the talking. You'll show up to challenges without fear because your foundation is real. And it all starts with a choice. One step when you still can't see a way. It's not about how big the step is. It's about what it declares. It says, I trust my future more than I trust my fear. I don't need the outcome to match the vision yet to walk in belief. I will not worship my limitations. I will not serve my excuses. I will not negotiate with fear. I walk by faith. Period. And here's what happens next. Once you commit, really commit, doors open. Not because they were locked, but because you finally stopped trying to walk with conditions. You can't walk by faith with a backup plan. You can't walk by faith with one eye on the exit. You can't walk by faith and still be waiting for proof. You must burn the boats. You must cut the rope to your old life. You must silence the voice that says, play it safe. Sit this one out. Don't take the risk. Because if you don't silence that voice, it will control you. It will whisper so subtly that you won't even realize. You've traded your purpose for a pattern, your mission for comfort, your calling for convenience. Don't do it. Walk. Every time you take a step without seeing the whole staircase, you tell the universe, I am ready before I'm comfortable. I am committed before I'm confirmed. And that declaration, it moves things. Not always in ways you expect, but always in ways that shape you. Because faith doesn't just give you a result, it gives you identity. It chisels you. It burns away the version of you that needed everything to be perfect. It replaces it with someone who can walk through storms without blinking because they've learned to walk by what's within, not what's around. And don't be fooled, faith isn't passive surrender. It's not sitting still, hoping life figures itself out. It's the opposite. Faith is a form of spiritual aggression. It says, I will show up again. I will outlast what's trying to break me. I will stand when logic says to fold. I will build when there's no blueprint. And I will keep moving, not because I have proof, but because I have purpose. You keep asking, but what if it doesn't work? But real faith asks, what if it does? What if that one uncomfortable action you've been avoiding opens a door you didn't even know existed? What if your discipline becomes someone else's inspiration? What if your quiet decision to keep walking creates a ripple that outlives you? The truth is, you won't know until you do it. You won't feel ready. You'll feel tension. You'll feel resistance. You'll feel like nothing's changing. Do it anyway, because that's the cost of becoming someone who doesn't quit. Look at any leader, any giant, any legend. They all share one trait. They kept going without applause. They built in silence. They obeyed the vision before it made sense to the world. They made moves based on conviction, not comfort. And maybe you're in the middle of that right now, the in-between, not where you were, not yet where you want to be. The space where it's quiet, where you doubt yourself in the dark, where no one's checking, no one's clapping, and the results haven't arrived. Good. That means you're building something real, because faith always builds in the dark. You're not waiting for momentum. You're becoming the kind of person who creates it. Not by hype, not by noise, but by alignment. When your actions, your standards, and your inner voice all move in the same direction, you become untouchable, unstoppable, undeniable. And that doesn't happen on accident. It happens one small, invisible act of faith at a time. Waking up early when no one will notice, studying when no one is watching, speaking your vision when they laugh, building when they scroll, praying when it's quiet, working when it's hard. And that's the shift. Faith is no longer something you have. It becomes someone you are. You wake up one day and you're no longer trying to believe. You simply move like someone who knows. You don't need proof anymore because your identity has become the proof. You're no longer reacting. You're leading. You're no longer waiting for light. You are the light. And every step you take in silence, in darkness, in obedience, you become a living declaration. I don't walk by sight, I walk by truth. And what is truth? Truth is that the vision placed in you isn't random. It's a divine seed, and your job isn't to explain it. Your job is to protect it, to plant it, to water it with discipline and shield it from doubt, to nurture it when it's small and invisible, to keep building when no one understands, because you were the one trusted to carry it. Not them. Your faith isn't supposed to make sense to the masses. It's supposed to wake them up once the thing you believed in becomes real. You don't need their validation. You don't need a committee. You don't need a sign from the sky. You need your own word to mean something. You need your own discipline to carry weight. You need to be the kind of person who says, I said I would, and so I did. Even if no one else shows up. Even if the reward takes years. Even if no one claps, not even once. Because that kind of faith, it doesn't just open doors, it builds new ones. And you've come too far to back down now. You've walked too long through silence to abandon it before the echo. You've planted too many seeds to quit before the harvest. Keep walking, even if your legs are tired. Even if your mind screams to retreat. Even if the road disappears beneath your feet, keep walking. The ground will catch up. The path will rise. And the version of you who lives on the other side of this storm will not recognize the one who almost turned around. This is not the end. This is the middle, the holy middle, where your old self dissolves and your new self is forged. Not in clarity, but in obedience. Not in certainty, but in decision. This is the place where warriors are born, where leaders emerge, where builders rise. This is where your silence becomes louder than the world's noise, where your actions scream louder than any doubt, where your faith becomes fact, not because it was obvious, but because you refuse to quit. So take the next step, not because you see the way, but because you were born to make the way. This is what you've been called to, not comfort, not average, but faith so deep it bends reality. And right now, faith is calling your name. Will you answer? Answering doesn't mean shouting. It doesn't mean noise or public declarations. Sometimes answering looks like one quiet decision in a dark room. A whispered yes, a final line drawn in the sand. A moment when you say, "I'm done waiting. I'm done shrinking. I'm done pretending I don't hear the call." You don't have to feel brave to answer. You just have to be willing. Willing to walk. Willing to get up again. Willing to become someone who shows up when it's boring, when it's slow, when it's lonely. Because the ones who walk by faith, they don't just survive storms, they are shaped by them. Look at every great transformation. It didn't happen in celebration. It happened in isolation. Moses in the wilderness, Joseph in the prison, Jesus in the garden, alone, unseen, wrestling with purpose, doubt, destiny, and still choosing obedience. That's where legacy begins, not in being known, but in becoming anchored. Faith doesn't guarantee the outcome. It guarantees you'll be ready when it comes. It's not just about the dream. It's about who you must become to carry it. That's why it's hard. Because easy won't make you strong enough. Convenience won't forget the character you need. You weren't called to light burdens. You were called to carry something that matters. To lift something bigger than you. To hold a standard higher than what's trending. And that burden, it builds something inside you. It quiets the ego. It strengthens the soul. It humbles you without destroying you. It refines without erasing. Until your identity is no longer attached to outcomes, but anchored in obedience. You obey even when the results haven't shown up. You obey even when the audience is gone. You obey even when your own mind says, "What's the point?" Because this isn't about how you feel. It's about who you're becoming. The world teaches you to chase applause. Faith teaches you to chase alignment. And alignment will take you farther than approval ever could. Because when you're aligned, truly aligned, you become dangerous to every lie that used to control you. You stop needing evidence to stay committed. You stop asking for reassurance from people who don't carry your vision. You stop lowering your standards to make others comfortable. And most importantly, you stop quitting when it gets quiet. Because the silence is not absence. It's preparation. When a seed is buried in the soil, it looks like nothing is happening. But underneath, it's breaking. It's stretching. It's dying to one form so it can rise into another. That's what you are. Not stuck, not lost. Just in the soil. Just in the process. Just in the becoming. And when the time is right, not when it's convenient, not when you're finally in control, but when it's divinely aligned, the soil splits, the shell breaks, and that tiny seed buried in silence becomes something no one saw coming. That's the reward of faith, not the thing you get, but the person you become along the way. So stop asking, "Where is the path?" and start declaring, "I'll walk anyway." Stop asking, "Why is it taking so long?" and start saying, "I'll keep building anyway." Stop asking, "What if I fail?" and instead whisper, "What if this step changes everything?" Because it might. That call you make, that decision you've been avoiding, that vision you've been sitting on for years, it might be the one thing that shifts your life in a way you can't yet imagine. But you won't know until you move. You've heard it said that faith without works is dead. Let me tell you something even more dangerous. Dreams without discipline are betrayal. Betrayal to your calling, to your future, to the version of you that could have existed if you had just started. Start, even if it's small, even if it's clumsy, even if it makes no sense to anyone but you. Start because delay is a lie dressed in logic. Start because fear is loudest right before the shift. Start because every minute you wait is a vote for who you used to be. You've been in this loop long enough, consuming, planning, wishing. Enough. Now you walk, not because you have the map, but because you've heard the call. And you won't always hear it clearly. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a burning in your chest. Sometimes it's a door that keeps closing until you finally get the message to stop knocking and start building your own. But however it speaks, you know it's real. And that knowing, that's what makes you chosen. Not perfect, not flawless, just willing. Willing to walk, willing to carry, willing to keep building, even when there's nothing but silence and seed and soil. Because that's all faith needs, not results, just your next step. That next step, it's not about how far it gets you. It's about what it unlocks, inside you, through you. Because when you step in faith, something changes behind the scenes. People think faith is about forcing the outcome, but real faith is knowing the outcome doesn't change your obedience. That's the level you're being called to. Not emotional faith, not conditional faith, but identity-level faith. The kind that doesn't flinch, the kind that doesn't shrink, the kind that stands tall even when your knees are shaking and says, "Even now I walk." Because walking by faith isn't about walking fearlessly. It's about walking anyway, even with the fear, even with the questions, even with the silence. Every time you walk, you're building something the world can't see yet. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the unseen is where the sacred work happens. Maybe God doesn't show you the whole road, because He knows you'd try to skip the parts that make you who you're meant to be. You want peace. You want purpose. You want power. Then you must be willing to walk where others would wait. And hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not missing your moment. You're right on time for the season that will grow. Your spirit refine your voice and ignite your destiny. But only if you move. Only if you say yes. Only if you step not knowing what's next, but trusting that something greater walks with you. This isn't about having it all together. It's about saying, "I don't know how, but I know I'm called." And that is enough. You don't have to know how the story ends. You just have to keep writing. You don't have to see the finish line. You just have to keep stepping. Because one day, the thing you're building will become so real, so strong, so undeniable that others will ask, "How did you know?" And you'll say, "I didn't. I just walked anyway." You see, faith is not for the weak. It is for the warriors. The ones who stare into darkness and still move. The ones who stop checking the forecast and start building the ark. The ones who stop waiting for certainty and become certainty themselves. That's you now. You're no longer chasing faith. You've become it, not a feeling, a force, a quiet burning conviction that says, "I'm not waiting for the world to believe. I believe first, and I build like it's already done." And that's what makes you different. The world wants proof. You move from promise. The world wants comfort. You grow from chaos. The world wants easy. You chose purpose. And maybe no one sees the hours, the discipline, the sacrifice, the unseen steps you've taken again and again with no applause. But faith sees, and faith repays. Because when you walk by it long enough, it stops being a risk and starts being a rhythm. So let them doubt, let them laugh, let them wonder what you're doing. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe your old self an apology. You owe your future your next step. Walk like the ground will rise to meet you. Walk like there's an army of angels on your left and right. Walk like your voice is carrying something divine, because it is. You are not just walking through life. You are walking out a legacy. You don't know who your faith will awaken, who your discipline will inspire, who your steps will empower to take their own. This is bigger than you, but it begins with you. It begins with your decision to not just consume these words, but to let them call something forward, to let them mark this moment as the one where it all changed, where you stopped scrolling and started building, where you stopped doubting and started walking. You've been prepared for this. You've been stretched for this. Now it's time to move. And yes, you may be tired, but you're stronger than you've ever been. Yes, you may be afraid, but your courage is finally louder than your fear. Yes, you may feel alone, but you've never been more guided. Everything in your life has led here. Every failure, every delay, every scar, every quiet night wondering if it's ever going to change. This is it. This is your shift. So take the step, even if it's trembling, even if it's small, even if you can't see 5 feet ahead. You don't need a guarantee. You just need God. And if He called you, He will carry you. You don't need the whole vision. You just need faith that the first step matters. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to move. Because when you walk by faith, the world doesn't recognize you, but heaven does, and you will. If you're still here, it's not because you needed more information. It's because something deeper in you already knew. You didn't come for answers. You came for permission to move before it makes sense to trust, before the way is clear to walk by something stronger than sight. And now you know. The next step isn't about certainty, it's about alignment. Alignment with who you were born to be, even when the world hasn't caught up to it yet. The question isn't whether the way will appear. The question is whether you'll keep walking until it does. So before the screen fades, before your mind fills with 1,000 reasons to delay again, remember this. Faith doesn't shout. It whispers, keep going, one step, then another. That's how the invisible becomes inevitable. Now go, quietly, boldly, and walk like it's already done.